What happens when a woman becomes invisible in her own marriage? Harper had been Austin Miller's wife for 3 years, but they lived like strangers under the same luxurious roof. No conversations, no touch, no acknowledgement of her existence. She was nothing more than a business arrangement to the billionaire CEO. But what if a simple invitation changed everything? Sometimes the heart finds a way to break through the coldest walls. And sometimes you have to lose everything to discover what really matters. If this story touched your heart, please like, subscribe, and tell us in the comments where you're listening from. And if you felt it was really worth your time, click the "Totally Worth It" button. Your gesture makes all the difference and helps us keep bringing you stories like this. Silence had its own weight in the Miller mansion. It wasn't just the absence of sound, but a dense presence that hung between the Italian marble walls and imported crystal chandeliers. Harper Peterson Miller knew every nuance of that silence. The lonely echo of her bare feet on the cold floor in the morning, the whisper of wind through panoramic windows that were never opened, and especially the deafening emptiness that occupied the space between her and the man who slept in the room next to hers. 3 years, 1,095 days of a marriage that existed only on paper and legal records. Harper could count with precision because she had mentally marked each day since she first crossed the threshold of this house in Rancho Santa Fe, San Diego, wearing a discreet suit instead of a wedding dress. There was no party, no eternal love vows, just signatures on contracts that sealed the fate of 2 families and condemned 2 hearts to the golden prison of duty. The routine was relentless in its predictability. Austin Miller left home at 6:15 in the morning, always impeccable in his Armani suits, driving different cars from his collection as if choosing ties. The sound of the engine, whether the red Ferrari on Mondays or the black Tesla on Fridays, was the only sign of masculine life Harper received. She learned to identify each vehicle by the rumble of its engine, a useless skill she developed out of sheer boredom. "Good morning, Mrs. Miller." Elena's voice, the 50-year-old Filipino housekeeper, broke the morning silence like a stone thrown into a still lake. "Mr. Miller left a message saying he'll be late today, meeting with Japanese investors." Harper smiled at Elena, the only genuine smile she could produce those days. "Thank you, Elena. As always, you're the only bridge between us." It was a cruel and embarrassing truth. Elena knew more about Austin's schedule than his own wife. Information arrived filtered, like crumbs thrown to a hungry bird. "Mr. Miller will travel to New York next week." "Mr. Miller cancelled today's dinner." "Mr. Miller asked if you need anything from the pharmacy." Practical questions, never personal ones. Basic needs, never desires of the heart. Harper walked through the house like an elegant ghost, always well-dressed for an audience that didn't exist. Her degrees in business administration and international relations from UC San Diego were framed in her personal office, a room Austin had never visited. She spoke fluent English, Spanish, and French, a skill that now only served to read novels in different languages, trying to live through fictional characters, the emotions her own life denied. The worst part wasn't Austin's indifference. It was the cold politeness with which he treated her in the rare moments their lives crossed paths. An "excuse me" when they passed in the hallway, a nod during breakfast when he occasionally appeared in the kitchen before Eleanor arrived. Empty words of courtesy that hurt more than silence because they constantly reminded Harper of her position, a tolerated stranger in her own home. "Why do you accept this?" The question echoed in Harper's mind as she watched the sunset through the living room window. The view was breathtaking. Rolling hills covered with California's native vegetation, the Pacific Ocean gleaming in the distance like diamonds scattered over blue velvet. Beauty that hurt to contemplate alone. The answer was simple and bitter, because her family depended on it. Daniel and Sarah Peterson had built Peterson Financial with decades of sweat and hard work, only to watch it crumble when the global economy collapsed. The merger with Miller Enterprises wasn't just a business opportunity, it was a lifeline, and Harper was the price of that salvation. "You understand, sweetheart," her father had said that terrible night 3 years ago, his hands trembling as he held the papers of impending bankruptcy. "It's just for a few years, until the company stabilizes." A few years. as if time were a currency she could spend freely, as if youth and dreams were infinite resources. The sound of a key in the lock interrupted her thoughts. Austin was coming home early, something that happened maybe once a month. Harper heard his firm steps in the entrance hall, the familiar sound of his briefcase being placed on the marble console, the tired sigh he always gave when arriving home. She remained motionless on the sofa, pretending to read a book she hadn't been able to process for 20 minutes. She knew he would walk straight past the living room, go upstairs and lock himself in his office until dinner time, which would happen at different times in different rooms, as always. But this time, Austin stopped. Harper felt more than saw his presence at the living room entrance. His cologne, a masculine blend of bergamot and sandalwood, invaded her senses, awakening a bodily awareness she had learned to suppress. Slowly, she lifted her eyes from the book. Austin Miller at 32 was devastatingly handsome, in a way that irritated Harper. Dark brown hair always perfectly cut, grey-blue eyes that she had seen spark with determination during business calls, a body structure that even under expensive suits showed evidence of hours in the mansion's private gym. He was the kind of man who made secretaries stumble in hallways and financial journalists get flustered during interviews. And he looked at her as if she were a well-positioned piece of furniture. Harper. His voice was deep, controlled, professional as always. Austin. She closed the book, maintaining the dignity that had become her daily armor. Heavy silence settled between them. Harper could hear the tick-tock of the antique clock in the corner of the room, the distant hum of the air conditioning, her own heart beating faster than normal. Austin opened his mouth as if to say something, hesitated and then simply nodded before going upstairs. Harper remained motionless until she heard the office door close on the upper floor. Then, for the first time in weeks, silent tears ran down her face. It wasn't sadness. It was something worse. It was the pain of existing in a space where you don't matter, where your presence is just an inconvenient reminder of fulfilled obligations. Outside, the first stars were beginning to appear in the California sky, and Harper wondered how much longer she could live being invisible in her own life, waiting for something that might never come. Thursday morning began like all the others in the past 3 years. Harper woke to the distant sound of the garage door closing. Austin had already left for another day at the Miller Enterprises empire. Coffee was ready in the automatic machine, programmed to work at exactly 6 in the morning, and the house returned to its familiar silence. Eleanor arrived punctually at 7, bringing with her the aroma of fresh bread from the French bakery 20 minutes away. It was one of the small luxuries Harper had silently negotiated over the years. If she had to live in a golden cage, at least let it be a cage with decent croissants. "Good morning, Mrs. Miller." "Mr. Austin left an envelope for you on the hall table." Elena seemed more animated than usual, her Filipino eyes sparkling with barely disguised curiosity. Harper frowned. In 3 years, Austin had never left anything for her except practical messages transmitted through Elena. Her hands trembled slightly as she picked up the cream paper envelope with her name written in his firm, slanted handwriting. "Mrs. Miller," the formal note read, "I request your presence at the annual Miller Foundation Charity Gala, which will take place on Saturday, March 18th at the Grand Monarch Hotel. The event requires the presence of both spouses from senior management. Please confirm by the end of the day. Sincerely, Austin." Harper read the note 3 times before the words made complete sense. Austin was inviting her to accompany him to a public event. For the first time in 3 years, she would be seen beside him, recognized as his wife before the corporate world he commanded. But why? Why now? "Elena," Harper called, her voice sounding strange even to herself. "What do you know about this gala?" The housekeeper approached, drying her hands on her embroidered apron. "It's a very important event, ma'am. All the main business people in San Diego will be there. Mr. Austin always goes alone." She paused, realizing the implication of her words. "I mean, this year will be different." Different. The word echoed in Harper's mind as she climbed the stairs toward her room. What had changed? What would make Austin break 3 years of carefully cultivated indifference? Harper spent the rest of the morning trying to decipher the motivations behind the invitation. Sitting in her personal office, surrounded by books she had read to fill empty hours, she analyzed every possibility. Maybe it was social pressure. Maybe someone was questioning why the CEO's wife never appeared at public events. Or maybe it was business strategy, an important merger that required the image of a stable family man. What it certainly wasn't, she knew with bitter certainty, was genuine desire for her company. Around noon, Harper made a decision that surprised her. She would go. Not because Austin had requested her presence with the coldness of a corporate memo, but because she was tired of being invisible, tired of existing only in the shadows of a life that should be hers too. She picked up the phone and dialed the Miller Enterprises number, a number she knew by heart, though she had never used it. Miller Enterprises, CEO's office, Rachel speaking. The professional voice of Austin's secretary sounded from the other end of the line. "Hello, Rachel. This is Harper Miller. I'd like to speak with my husband, please." A momentary silence followed. Harper could almost hear Rachel's confusion. This was probably the first time the boss's wife had called the office. One moment, Mrs. Miller. I'll check if Mr. Austin can take your call." 3 minutes passed. Harper began to wonder if Austin would simply refuse to speak with her when his deep voice finally echoed through the line. "Harper, did something happen?" There was genuine tension in his voice, as if the only reason she would call would be an emergency. "No, Austin, nothing happened. I'm calling about the gala." Harper kept her voice firm, professional. "I accept the invitation." Another silence. Harper could hear the sound of papers being shuffled, maybe Austin trying to process this unexpected conversation. "Right. Great. The event is black tie. Rachel will send all the details by email." His voice had returned to business tone. "Anything else?" "Actually, yes." Harper took a deep breath, gathering courage for the next words. "I have a question. Why now, Austin? Why do you want me to go?" This time, the silence stretched so long that Harper thought the call had dropped. "It's important for the company that I be seen as a stable family man," he finally replied, each word carefully measured. "There are several important mergers being negotiated, and the presence of a wife conveys stability." Harper closed her eyes. Of course, she was a chess piece, an accessory to complete Austin Miller's image as the successful and reliable CEO. "I understand," she said, her voice colder now. "Well, then you'll have your decorative wife on Saturday." "Harper, I didn't—" "It's fine, Austin. I always knew what my role was here." She hung up before he could respond. That afternoon, Harper did something she hadn't done in 3 years. She left the house without telling Elena about her plans. She drove her white BMW, a wedding gift she suspected had been chosen by Rachel, to Fashion Valley Shopping Center. If Austin wanted a decorative wife, she would give him exactly that, but it would be on her terms. At Nordstrom, Harper chose a dress that cost more than Elena made in 2 months. It was a deep navy blue that brought out her eyes, with a cut that embraced every curve of her body without being vulgar. It was elegant, sophisticated, and absolutely stunning. "Perfect for you, madame," said the saleswoman, an elegant French woman who clearly recognized quality when she saw it. "You're going to stop traffic." Harper smiled for the first time in weeks. It wasn't about stopping traffic. It was about reminding herself that she still existed, that she was still a desirable and intelligent woman, even if her own husband had forgotten that. As she drove back home, Harper found herself thinking about Saturday night. It would be strange to be beside Austin in public, pretending to be a happy couple in front of people who probably didn't even know she existed. But maybe it was exactly what she needed, a chance to remember what it was like to be seen, to be recognized, to be more than just a silent presence in an empty house. When Austin came home that night, Harper was in the kitchen helping Elena with dinner, something she rarely did, preferring to eat alone in her room. "Good evening," he said, seeming genuinely surprised to find her there. "Good evening, Austin." Harper didn't look up from the salad she was preparing. "How was your meeting with the Japanese investors?" She felt him hesitate in the kitchen doorway. "How did you know about the Japanese investors?" "Elena told me you'd be late yesterday because of them." Harper finally looked at him, noticing the confused expression on his face. "That's how I know about your life and through our housekeeper." Austin ran his hand through his hair, a gesture Harper had noticed he made when he was uncomfortable. "The meetings were productive." "That's good." Harper returned her attention to the salad. I'm sure on Saturday you'll be able to tell everyone how it feels to have a stable family to support your business." The words came out sharper than she intended. Austin remained motionless for a long moment, as if he were processing not just what she said, but the tone in which she said it. "Harper," he began, but she interrupted him. "I'll be ready at 7, as I always am for all the commitments that really matter." She left the kitchen without looking back, leaving Austin alone with Elena, who was pretending to be very busy washing dishes that were already clean. As she climbed the stairs, Harper felt something she hadn't experienced in a long time: anticipation. Saturday wouldn't be just another night. It would be the night she stepped out of the shadows and reminded the world, and maybe herself, of who she really was. But what she couldn't predict was how that night would change everything in ways neither of them could imagine possible. The Grand Monarch Hotel was a monument to California luxury. Its glass towers reflected the golden lights of the sunset over San Diego, while uniformed valets guided Maseratis, Bentleys, and Lamborghinis to the private parking. Harper watched everything through the window of Austin's Mercedes S-Class, her fingers nervously smoothing the silk of her navy blue dress. Austin drove in silence as always, but this time Harper caught something different in the tension of his shoulders, in the way his hands gripped the steering wheel tighter than necessary. When he saw her coming down the stairs that night, something had changed in his expression, just for a second, but she saw it. "You look stunning," he had murmured, and Harper had to hold onto the banister to keep from stumbling. Those were the first truly personal words he had spoken to her in 3 years. Now, as they approached the hotel's main entrance, Harper could see San Diego's business elite emerging from their expensive cars like peacocks displaying their plumage. Women in Chanel and Versace, men in custom-made tuxedos, all part of a world she had only observed through magazines and news reports. "Remember," Austin said, his voice returning to professional tone, "you're Harper Miller, graduated in business administration from UC San Diego, fluent in 3 languages. These people respect competence as much as pedigree." Harper turned to him, surprised. "You know about my education?" Austin seemed momentarily disconcerted, as if he had revealed more than intended. Of course I know. You're my wife." On paper, Harper thought. But she said nothing. The valet opened Harper's door, and she emerged from the car like a butterfly leaving its cocoon. The hotel entrance lights reflected off the golden strands of her loose hair, which she had decided to let fall in soft waves over her shoulders. The dress embraced her silhouette without being ostentatious, and the pearl necklace, the only wedding gift Austin had given, probably chosen by Rachel, completed the look with timeless elegance. Austin appeared beside her, offering his arm with the courtesy of a polite stranger. "Ready?" "I was born ready," Harper replied, surprising herself with her own confidence. The Grand Monarch's main ballroom was a spectacle of Italian marble, Austrian crystal chandeliers, and floral arrangements that cost more than most people's monthly salary. Approximately 300 guests circulated through the space, their conversations creating a sophisticated buzz that echoed under the vaulted ceiling. Harper felt all eyes turn to them when they entered. It wasn't her imagination. Conversations paused, heads turned. Discreet whispers spread through the ballroom like waves. "My God," she heard a woman whisper to another. "Who is she? Austin Miller finally brought someone." "Richard." Austin nodded to a distinguished gray-haired man approaching with an elegant woman beside him. "Allow me to introduce my wife, Harper. Harper, this is Richard Steinberg, CEO of Steinberg Industries, and his wife, Margaret." Harper extended her hand with a warm smile. "It's a pleasure to meet you. I've been following Steinberg Industries' impressive work in Latin American market expansion." Richard blinked, clearly surprised. "You follow our international business?" "I have a degree in business administration with a focus on international relations," Harper replied naturally. "And being fluent in Spanish, I have particular interest in Hispanic market penetration strategies." Margaret Steinberg smiled, genuinely impressed. "How refreshing to meet someone who actually understands business. Post wives here only talk about Pilates and charity lunches." Austin remained silent beside Harper, but she could feel his surprise. During the next 30 minutes, as they circulated through the ballroom, Harper conversed fluently about global economics with the president of the San Diego Chamber of Commerce, discussed corporate sustainability with the CEO of a green technology startup, and even exchanged a few phrases in French with the French consul present at the event. "Austin," said Patricia Williams, owner of one of California's largest real estate fortunes, "where have you been hiding this brilliant woman? Harper is absolutely charming." Austin began, but was interrupted by a masculine voice behind them. Harper Peterson." Everyone turned to see a tall, dark-haired man, approximately 40 years old, wearing an impeccable tuxedo and a warm smile. His brown eyes sparkled with genuine recognition as he approached. Harper felt her heart race. Nathan Callahan? "I can't believe it!" Nathan opened his arms and Harper, without thinking, hugged him warmly. "It's been so long. You look absolutely radiant." Austin watched the interaction with an expression Harper had never seen before. His gray-blue eyes had darkened, and a tense line appeared in his jaw. "Nathan, this is my husband, Austin Miller," Harper said, noticing the tension in the air. "Austin, Nathan Callahan. We worked together at Peterson Financial before I got married." Nathan extended his hand to Austin with a professional smile. "Austin Miller of Miller Enterprises. It's an honor, sir. I'm a great admirer of your company's work in the sustainable technology sector." Austin shook Nathan's hand with more force than necessary. "Callahan, are you the Nathan Callahan from Callahan International Investments?" "Guilty as charged," Nathan laughed. "And you, Harper, look more beautiful than ever. Marriage has clearly been good to you." Harper felt a pang of bitter irony, but maintained her smile. "Thank you, Nathan. And you? Still conquering the world of international investments?" "Doing my best. Actually, I just opened an office in Sao Paulo. I'm always looking for bilingual talent with emerging market experience." Nathan studied her with renewed interest. "Do you still have that gift for risk analysis that used to impress me so much?" Austin took an almost imperceptible step closer to Harper. "My wife is quite busy with family commitments." The response was so evasive and condescending that Harper felt her blood boil. "Actually," she said, looking directly at Austin, "I have quite a lot of free time lately." Nathan caught the tension immediately. "Well, if you're ever interested in discussing opportunities, Harper, I'd love to resume our professional partnership. You were always brilliant with market analysis." "That would be interesting," Harper replied, aware that Austin was practically radiating tension beside her. "Excellent. How about we have dinner next week to talk? I know a fantastic Argentine restaurant in the Gaslamp Quarter. We could discuss some projects I have in mind." Before Harper could respond, Austin intervened. "I'm afraid Harper's schedule is quite full next week." Harper turned to him, her eyes sparkling. "Actually, my schedule is completely free, Austin." She turned back to Nathan with a defiant smile. "I'd love to have dinner with you, Nathan. When would be convenient?" Nathan, clearly perceiving the tense dynamic between the couple, smiled diplomatically. "How about Tuesday at 8, at Café Sevilla?" "Perfect," Harper said, ignoring Austin's look. "It'll be wonderful to catch up." The rest of the evening passed in a haze of introductions, superficial conversations, and palpable tension between Harper and Austin. She shone in every conversation, impressing senior executives with her knowledge and natural charm. But Austin remained unusually quiet, watching every interaction of hers with an intensity that made Harper feel simultaneously irritated and strangely excited. During dinner, seated at the main table with other prominent CEOs, Harper chatted animatedly with the mayor's wife about social inclusion programs, while Austin picked at his food without much appetite. "Austin," Richard Steinberg whispered, leaning closer, "you have an exceptional wife. Where did you find her?" Austin looked at Harper, who at that moment was laughing at something the British ambassador had said. Her laughter was musical, genuine, and lit up her entire face in a way he had never seen before. "She's always been exceptional," Austin murmured, more to himself than to Richard. "I just forgot that." When the orchestra began to play for the event's traditional dance, Nathan appeared beside Harper's table. "May I have the honor of this dance, Mrs. Miller?" he asked, extending his hand gallantly. Harper looked at Austin, expecting, what, for him to protest? To claim his right as husband? But Austin simply nodded, his face an impenetrable mask. "Of course," Harper said, accepting Nathan's hand. On the dance floor, Nathan guided her expertly through a smooth waltz. "Are you okay, Harper? There seems to be some tension between you and your husband." Harper smiled sadly. "Tension assumes there's some kind of relationship to have tension in. Austin and I are more like polite roommates." "That explains a lot," Nathan said gently. "But can I tell you something? He couldn't take his eyes off you all night. And the way he was looking at me, well, let's just say, if looks could kill, I'd be a dead man." Harper laughed, but when she looked at the main table, she saw Nathan was right. Austin was watching them with an intensity that made her heart race. There was something wild in his eyes, something possessive she had never seen before, and for the first time in 3 years, Harper wondered if maybe, just maybe, she wasn't as invisible to Austin as she thought. When the music ended and they returned to the table, Austin stood abruptly. "It's late. We should go." During the entire ride home, neither of them said a word. But this silence was different, charged with an electricity that made the air inside the car seem too dense to breathe. Harper looked out the window, reliving the night. For the first time in years, she had felt alive, valued, seen. And Austin's reaction? Well, that was a mystery she was eager to decipher. What she didn't know was that Austin was experiencing an internal revolution that frightened him deeply. Seeing Harper shine that night, seeing her laugh with other men, seeing her be admired and desired, had awakened something primitive in him. Something he had buried so deeply he had forgotten it existed. Jealousy, desire, and the terrifying fear that maybe it was too late to reclaim something he never knew he wanted until he was about to lose it. Tuesday arrived with a gentle rain that painted San Diego gray, but Harper woke with an energy she hadn't felt in years. For the first time since her marriage, she had something to look forward to. Intelligent conversation, professional recognition, the feeling of being seen as more than an elegant ghost wandering through an empty mansion. She chose her outfit carefully. A beige Armani blazer over a white silk blouse, dress pants that accentuated her long legs, and heeled shoes that added confidence to every step. It wasn't seduction. It was power. It was reminding the world and herself of who Harper Peterson had been before becoming the invisible Mrs. Miller. Austin had left early, as always, but this time Harper noticed something different. He hesitated at the garage door, as if he wanted to say something. His eyes lingered on her for a moment longer than usual before he simply nodded and left. "You look radiant today, Mrs. Miller," Eleanor commented while serving breakfast. "Going out?" "I have a business dinner," Harper replied, savoring how the words sounded. Business, professionalism, purpose. "How wonderful! It's been so long since I've seen you this excited." Eleanor smiled warmly. "Does Mr. Austin know?" Harper paused, her coffee cup halfway to her lips. "We didn't discuss it. There wasn't anything to discuss, really. They barely talked about the weather, let alone their personal plans. Café Sevilla was located in the heart of the Gaslamp Quarter, an Argentine restaurant known for both its authentic cuisine and intimate atmosphere. Harper arrived punctually at 8, finding Nathan already waiting at a reserved table near the window. "Harper," Nathan stood up, delicately kissing her hand like a true gentleman. "You look absolutely stunning. Please, sit down." The restaurant pulsed with Latin energy. Spanish guitars played softly in the background. Candles created dancing shadows on the exposed brick walls, and the aroma of grilled meats and exotic spices perfumed the air. It was warm, alive, vibrant. Everything the Miller mansion wasn't. "This place is perfect," Harper said, genuinely enchanted. "Thank you for inviting me, Nathan. The pleasure is all mine. Actually, I have a confession." Nathan smiled conspiratorially as the waiter served Argentine red wine. "When I saw you at the gala, I was genuinely shocked. You simply disappeared from the professional radar after your marriage. Many of us wondered what had happened to one of Peterson Financial's brightest minds." Harper felt a pang of sadness mixed with validation. Life took unexpected turns. Clearly. But your talents shouldn't be going to waste, Harper. You were phenomenal at emerging market analysis. I remember that report you did on investment opportunities in Chile. It was brilliant. During the next hour, Nathan painted a tempting picture of professional possibilities. His company was expanding operations in Latin America, needed someone with cultural and linguistic expertise to lead projects in São Paulo, Buenos Aires, and Mexico City. Someone who understood not just the numbers, but the cultural nuances that made international business work. "It's exactly the kind of work you always said you wanted to do," Nathan continued, his eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. "International travel, complex negotiations, complete autonomy over your decisions. And frankly, the salary would be substantial." Harper felt her heart race. It was everything she had dreamed of before marriage: purpose, independence, the chance to use her education and talents for something meaningful. "It sounds like a dream," she admitted. "But it's complicated, Nathan. My situation—" "Your husband?" Harper nodded, taking a generous sip of wine. "Austin has specific expectations about a wife's role." Nathan frowned. "Harper, you're too brilliant to be just a decorative accessory. If Austin Miller doesn't recognize that, then he's an idiot." What Nathan didn't know was that at that exact moment, Austin Miller was discovering just how much of an idiot he had been. Austin had tried to concentrate on work all day, but his mind constantly drifted to Harper. The image of her at the gala, radiant, confident, being admired by other men, haunted him. And the worst part was Nathan Callahan, with his charming smile and obvious admiration for Harper. At 7:30, Austin couldn't pretend he was working anymore. He told Rachel he had an external meeting and drove to the Gaslamp Quarter, parking across the street from Café Sevilla. He felt like a pathetically cliched private detective, but couldn't pull himself away. Through the restaurant window, he could see Harper and Nathan in animated conversation. She was laughing, that musical laugh he had heard at the gala, and her eyes sparkled in a way that Austin realized with horror he had never seen when she was with him. Nathan leaned closer when he spoke, his gestures expressive and engaging. Harper leaned forward, clearly fascinated by the conversation. They looked connected, like two people who understood each other completely. Austin gripped the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white. What the hell was happening to him? Harper had every right to dine with whomever she wanted. They didn't have a real marriage. He had made sure of that for the past 3 years. But seeing her there, being courted by another man, awakened something primitive and possessive that Austin didn't know existed. It was as if someone was stealing something precious that he didn't even know he possessed. His phone rang. It was his father. "Austin, where are you? We have the teleconference with the Tokyo investors in 10 minutes. "Cancel it," Austin said abruptly, without taking his eyes off the restaurant window. "Cancel it? Son, this meeting has been scheduled for weeks. We're talking about 200 million in investments." "I said cancel it, Dad. Reschedule for tomorrow." Austin hung up before Robert Miller could protest. In the restaurant, Nathan had stood up and was offering his hand to Harper. They were leaving. Austin followed them at a safe distance, feeling simultaneously ridiculous and unable to stop. Nathan led Harper to a silver convertible Mercedes, opening the door for her with exaggerated gallantry. They talked for a few more minutes on the sidewalk, Nathan clearly reluctant to let her go. Then Harper did something that made Austin's blood boil. She leaned in and kissed Nathan's cheek goodbye. It was an innocent, friendly kiss, but to Austin it seemed like a declaration of war. When Harper finally drove home, Austin followed her, keeping his distance. He arrived at the mansion just a few minutes after her, entering through the front door with a storm of emotions raging in his chest. Harper was in the kitchen, pouring herself a glass of water, still wearing the beige blazer that made her look professional and independent. Two things that Austin realized had always excited him about her, even when he tried to ignore it. "How was your evening?" Austin asked, trying to sound casual. Harper turned, surprised. "Austin, I thought you were working late. I finished early. So, how was dinner?" He leaned against the counter, feigning indifference. "It was enlightening." Harper studied him carefully. "Nathan has some interesting job proposals." "Work?" The word came out sharper than Austin intended. "Yes, work. You remember the concept, right? When people use their skills and education to contribute productively to society?" Austin deserved the barb, but that didn't lessen its impact. Harper, you don't need to work. You have everything you need here. Everything? Harper laughed, but there was no humor in that sound. Austin, I have beautiful objects and a fat bank account, but I don't have purpose, I don't have passion, I don't have a life. There's a difference. And Nathan Callahan offers those things? The question came out loaded with an intensity that surprised them both. Harper blinked, noticing something new in Austin's tone. Nathan offers professional opportunity, which is more than I can say about my current situation. Your current situation is being my wife. On paper, Austin. Only on paper. Harper placed the glass in the sink with more force than necessary. You've made it very clear over the past 3 years that wife is just a title to you, not a relationship. Austin took a step closer, his grey-blue eyes darkening. And what if I said, I don't want you working for Nathan Callahan? Harper stared at him, genuinely shocked. By what right? By the right of being your husband. My husband? Harper laughed, but this time there was real anger in her voice. Austin, you haven't talked to me, really talked to me, for 3 years. You treat me like a well-positioned piece of furniture. And now, because another man shows interest in my mind, suddenly you want to claim marital rights? Austin had no answer for that because it was true, and the truth hit him like a punch to the stomach. He was jealous, burning, consuming, possessive jealousy of a man who was offering Harper everything he had denied her. Harper, he began, but she was already leaving the kitchen. Good night, Austin. Thank you for the sudden interest in my life. It's a shame it took 3 years and another man to awaken it. Austin remained alone in the kitchen, surrounded by the familiar silence of the mansion. But this time the silence didn't feel comfortable. It felt empty, cold, like the life he had built for them. And for the first time in 3 years, Austin Miller wondered if he had lost something precious while he was too busy building his empire to notice. Upstairs, Harper prepared for bed with a mixture of satisfaction and confusion. Austin's reaction had been unexpected. There was something new in his eyes, something that seemed dangerously close to jealousy. But jealousy presupposed that he cared. And if Austin cared, why had he spent 3 years making her feel invisible? As she lay down, Harper wondered if dinner with Nathan had been the catalyst her life needed. But for what exactly? She still wasn't sure. The 3 days following the dinner passed like a delicate dance of avoidance and electric tension. Harper noticed subtle changes in Austin's behavior. He came home earlier, hesitated in the hallways as if he wanted to say something, and his eyes followed her with an intensity that made her skin tingle. On Thursday morning, Harper was in the back garden with Elena, supervising the pruning of the rose bushes, when she heard familiar footsteps on the Portuguese stones of the patio. Austin rarely came out to the garden. In fact, Harper couldn't remember the last time she had seen him in that part of the property. "Eleanor," Austin said, his voice sounding strangely formal, "could you give us a moment?" Eleanor looked from Austin to Harper with barely disguised curiosity, but nodded respectfully. "Of course, Mr. Miller. I'll prepare lunch." Harper remained kneeling beside the roses, pretending to be absorbed in the pruning. The flowers were her favorites. David Austin roses in peach and coral tones that she had planted in the first year of marriage, when she still had hopes that this house would become a home. "Harper," Austin's voice was closer now. "We need to talk." "About?" She didn't look up but could feel the warmth of his presence, the familiar scent of his cologne mixed with the smell of damp earth and flowers. "About Nathan Callahan. About you and me. About everything." Harper finally stood up, removing her gardening gloves and facing him directly. Austin looked different. There was a vulnerability in his eyes she had never seen before, a tension in his posture that suggested internal conflict. "Everything is quite a broad subject, Austin." He ran his hand through his hair, that nervous gesture Harper had learned to recognize. "Are you going to accept his job offer? Why does that matter to you?" "It matters." The words came out more intense than he clearly intended. "More than it should." Harper felt her heart race but kept her voice steady. "Why should it matter, Austin? For 3 years, you've made it clear that I'm just a convenient obligation, a paper wife to complete your corporate image." "That's not true." "No?" Harper laughed, but there was no humor in that sound. Then tell me, Austin, what's my favorite dish? What's my favorite color? What do I do during the 10 hours a day when you're at the office? What dreams did I have before I married you? Austin opened his mouth to respond, then closed it. The silence stretched between them like an abyss. You don't know anything about me, Harper continued, her voice getting stronger. And I don't know anything about you beyond what I read in Forbes. We're strangers, Austin. Polite strangers who share an address. Austin began, then stopped as if he were struggling to find the right words. You're right. And I hate that you're right. The admission surprised Harper. She had expected denial, justifications, maybe even anger, not this raw honesty. Then why, Austin? Why did you keep me at a distance all these years? Austin moved away, walking to the stone fountain in the center of the garden. When he spoke, his words were low as if they were being pulled from somewhere deep and painful. Because I didn't know how to be a husband. I only knew how to be a CEO. He turned to face her. My father always told me that marriage was strategy, not emotion, that loving a woman meant giving her the power to destroy you. Harper felt something stir in her chest. It wasn't forgiveness, but something close to understanding. And then, Austin continued, on the night of the gala I saw you, really saw you, talking to those executives as if you were their equal, which you are, laughing with Nathan as if you were happy. And I realized I had spent 3 years wasting something precious because I was too afraid to try. Afraid of what? Of discovering that you were too good for me, of falling in love with you and finding out it was too late for you to love me back. The words hung in the air between them like a suspended confession. Harper felt tears sting her eyes, but didn't know if they were from anger, sadness, or something more complicated. Austin, she began, but he interrupted her. No, let me finish. He took a step closer. In the past 3 days, I've been consumed by something I've never felt before. When you were with Nathan, when I saw him make you laugh, when I realized he was offering everything I denied you, Harper, I was jealous, sick, possessive, irrational jealousy. Harper stared at him, seeing the brutal sincerity in his eyes. And what do you want me to do with this information? I want a chance, a real chance. I don't want you to accept Nathan's job. Why? Because I'm in love with you. The words fell like a bomb between them. Harper felt the world tilt slightly on its axis. You're what? Austin moved closer, his eyes never leaving hers. I'm in love with you, Harper. I probably have been for 3 years, but I was too busy being a coward to admit it. Harper shook her head, taking a step back. No, Austin, you can't just show up here after 3 years of treating me like I was invisible and declare love. It doesn't work that way. I know I don't deserve a chance. But Harper, if you give me time, if you let me prove I can be the husband you deserve... Stop! Harper raised her hand. Just stop. You think it's that easy? That you can just flip a switch and suddenly we're a happy couple? It's not about easy, it's about truth. Austin was so close now that Harper could see the small lines around his eyes, the desperate intensity in his gaze. The truth is that you're the most intelligent, most beautiful, most fascinating woman I've ever met. The truth is that I spent 3 years trying not to fall in love with you because I thought it would be easier to keep my distance. The truth is that seeing you with Nathan made me realize I'd rather risk having my heart shattered than live another day without trying to win yours. Harper felt her defenses trembling, but forced herself to remain firm. And what if it's too late, Austin? What if 3 years of loneliness killed any feelings I might have had for you? Austin went pale, but didn't back down. Then at least I'll know I tried. But Harper, when you look at me, when you really look at me like you're doing now, I see something. Hope, maybe. Curiosity. Something that tells me maybe it's not too late. Harper wanted to deny it, wanted to tell him he was wrong. But she couldn't, because there was something there, something she had buried under 3 years of pain and disappointment, but that still glowed stubbornly like embers under ashes. I need to think, she said finally. How much time do you need? I don't know. Real time, Austin. Not a few hours or a few days, maybe weeks, maybe months. Austin nodded, though Harper could see how difficult it was for him to accept that. And Nathan? Nathan offered a professional opportunity. I'm not going to throw my career away because you finally decided maybe I matter. What if I could offer both, a career and us? Harper studied him carefully. How? Miller Enterprises is expanding into Latin America. We need someone to lead this project, someone with your experience and cultural knowledge. It would be a vice president position, reporting directly to me. Work for you? Austin, that wouldn't solve our problems. It would just create new ones. Then work with me, as a partner, as an equal. Austin took her hands, and Harper didn't pull away. Harper, I know I made mistakes. I know I wasted 3 years we can never get back. But if you give me a chance, a real chance, I swear I'll spend the rest of my life making up for every day I made you feel invisible. Harper looked at their joined hands, feeling the warmth of his skin, the quiet strength of his fingers. It was the first time he had touched her intentionally in 3 years. I'll think about it, she repeated, but didn't pull her hands away. Thank you. Austin brought one of her hands to his lips, kissing her knuckles delicately. That's all I can ask for. When he moved away and went back inside the house, Harper remained in the garden, her heart beating irregularly. The roses around her exhaled their sweet fragrance, and she wondered if it was possible for something that had withered to bloom again. That night, during dinner, which for the first time in 3 years they shared at the dining room table, Austin did something that surprised Harper. He asked questions. What's really your favorite dish? He asked, delicately cutting the salmon Eleanor had prepared. Harper stared at him, looking for signs of sarcasm or obligation, but finding only genuine curiosity. Mushroom risotto. My Italian grandmother used to make it when I was a child. I didn't know about your Italian grandmother. There are many things you don't know about me, Austin. Then tell me. We have time. And for the first time in 3 years, they talked. Really talked. Harper spoke about her childhood, about her dreams of traveling the world working in international development, about the lonely nights in the mansion when she wondered if she had made the right choice. Austin talked about the pressure of being heir to the Miller empire, about how he had learned to suppress emotions because his father said they were signs of weakness, about how lost he felt, trying to balance family expectations with his own desires. When the night ended, Harper went up to her room with more questions than answers. Austin had shown a vulnerability she never knew existed, but 3 years of pain didn't disappear with one conversation and a confession of love. The question was, did Harper still have enough courage to risk her heart one more time? And on the other side of the wall, Austin lay awake, praying it wasn't too late to win over the woman who had been his wife for 3 years, but whom he was only beginning to know. The following 2 weeks were like living in a parallel universe. Austin transformed into a man Harper didn't recognize. Attentive, present, determined to prove that his words in the garden weren't just impulse motivated by jealousy, but a genuine transformation. He started coming home at 6 instead of 9. They had dinner together every night, conversations that extended for hours about books, dream travels, life philosophies. Austin discovered that Harper read poetry in French when she was sad, that she dreamed of seeing the northern lights in Iceland, and that she had a secret talent for watercolor painting that she had abandoned when they got married. Harper, in turn, discovered that Austin played piano. There was a Steinway grand in the living room that she had never seen him use. She discovered that he read biographies of historical explorers before bed, that he had an irrational fear of snakes, and that his corporate arrogance masked a deep insecurity about never being good enough for the Miller family legacy. "Play something for me," Harper had asked one night, finding him at the piano after dinner. Austin had hesitated, then placed his fingers on the keys and played a melancholic and beautiful melody that brought tears to Harper's eyes. When he finished, he said, "I composed this when I was 16, on the day my father told me that emotions were luxuries CEOs couldn't afford." It was in these moments that Harper felt her defenses breaking. When she saw the man behind the corporate mask, when she realized that Austin had also been a prisoner of family expectations and pressures, but there were also the daily gestures that melted her resistance like chocolate in the sun. Fresh flowers in her office every morning, not ostentatious arrangements from expensive florists, but simple roses from the garden that he cut personally. Coffee prepared exactly as she liked it, with a pinch of cinnamon, waiting for her in the kitchen. Books he bought because he heard her mention interest in the author. "Are you trying to seduce me with gifts?" Harper had asked one day, finding a first edition copy of Garcia Marquez on her desk. "I'm trying to show that I pay attention," Austen had replied, "something I should have done 3 years ago." The line between resistance and surrender was becoming increasingly thin. Harper found herself eagerly anticipating dinners, the moments when Austen looked at her as if she were the most fascinating thing in the world. Their bodies had begun to move in an unconscious dance of proximity. Hands that touched when passing dishes, gazes that lingered longer than necessary, an electricity in the air that made Harper feel like a teenager again. Nathan had called 3 times about the job proposal, and Harper kept postponing an answer. How could she explain that her life had become a romance novel, with the husband who had ignored her for 3 years suddenly transforming into the man of her dreams? On Friday morning, Austen had left for Los Angeles for an acquisition meeting that would last the entire weekend. It was the first time in 2 weeks they had been separated for more than a few hours. "I'll miss you," he had said, gently kissing her forehead before leaving. It was only the second kiss of any kind they had shared in 3 years, and Harper felt her stomach do somersaults. "También te voy a extrañar," she had replied in Spanish, and saw Austen's eyes darken with an intensity that made her pulse race. With Austen away, the mansion returned to its familiar silence, but this time the silence seemed charged with expectation instead of emptiness. Harper wandered through the rooms like a restless ghost, finding herself thinking about Austen constantly. She was passing by his office, a territory she had always considered forbidden, when she noticed the door was ajar. Austen never left his office unlocked. Never. Harper hesitated at the threshold. It was a violation of privacy to enter, but something pulled her inside. Maybe curiosity about the man who was revealing himself in layers, maybe the desire to better understand who Austen Miller really was when no one was watching. The office was a masculine sanctuary of dark wood and leather, with a panoramic view of the Pacific Ocean. The walls were covered with diplomas, business awards, and photos of Austen with political dignitaries and industry leaders. But on the desk, Harper noticed something that made her smile: their wedding photo. It was a formal, cold photo, without genuine smiles, looking more like a business agreement being signed than a celebration of love. But the fact that Austen kept it on his desk, where he saw it every day, awakened something warm in Harper's chest. She was about to leave when she noticed a desk drawer that was slightly open, papers protruding from the edge. Without thinking much, she pulled the drawer to close it properly, but the documents caught her attention. Peterson Financial, Miller Enterprises, merger agreement was written at the top of the first paper. Harper frowned. Why would Austen have documents about their family's company merger on his desk? That transaction had been completed 3 years ago, right after the wedding. Driven by curiosity she couldn't suppress, Harper picked up the documents and began reading. The first pages were standard corporate legal material, evaluations, financial terms, integration timelines. But as she continued reading, one sentence made her blood freeze. "This merger is conditional upon the legal marriage between Austen James Miller and Harper Elizabeth Peterson, a union that must remain valid for a minimum period of 5 years from the date of signing this contract." Harper reread the sentence 3 times before her brain fully processed the meaning. Her fingers trembled as she turned the pages, looking for more details, praying she was interpreting it wrong. But she wasn't. It was all there, in cold, precise legal language. Peterson Financial was in imminent bankruptcy. Miller Enterprises offered to buy the company for $15 million, an amount that would save the Peterson family from complete financial ruin. But there was one condition. Austen Miller had to marry Daniel Peterson's daughter and remain married for 5 years. 5 years. As if she were a commodity with an expiration date. Harper continued reading, with nausea growing in her stomach. There were clauses about public appearances. The wife must accompany the CEO to corporate events when requested. About residence, both parties must maintain shared residence. Even about divorce. Any dissolution of marriage before the 5-year period will result in complete reversal of the financial transaction. Her hands trembled so much she almost dropped the papers. Everything made sense now. Austin's coldness during 3 years. The wedding without a party, without a honeymoon, without love. She wasn't a wife. She was a corporate asset. A living guarantee to secure a $15 million deal. And her parents, God, her parents knew. They had sold their daughter as part of a business agreement and let her believe it was to save the family from a temporary crisis. Harper felt bile rise in her throat. The last 2 weeks, the intimate conversations, the romantic dinners, the flowers, the loving looks, it had all been a farce. Austin wasn't in love with her. He was protecting his investment. The worst part was that she had begun to believe. She had begun to hope. She had begun to fall in love with the man she thought Austin was becoming. But that man didn't exist. It was just Austin fulfilling his contract with more creativity. With hands still trembling, Harper photographed each page of the contract with her phone. Then, carefully, she put the documents back in the drawer exactly as she had found them. She went up to her room like a robot, each step a struggle against the nausea and anger growing inside her. She sat on the bed that had become familiar, in the house that had begun to feel like home, and finally allowed the tears to come. They weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of fury. Fury at Austin for playing with her feelings, fury at her parents for betraying her, but mainly fury at herself for being stupid enough to believe that 3 years of indifference could transform into genuine love overnight. Her phone rang. It was Austin. "Harper, how are you? I missed you today." His voice sounded so sincere, so caring, that Harper almost believed again. Almost. "I'm fine," she managed to say, her voice sounding strangely normal. "How's the meeting?" "Boring without you to talk to afterward. I can't wait to get home tomorrow." Home. As if it were both their home, not a golden prison where she was serving a 5-year sentence. "Austin," Harper said, testing her own reactions. "Do you love me?" A momentary silence. "Of course I love you." "Why are you asking?" Lies. Everything was lies. "I just wanted to hear you say it." After they hung up, Harper sat in the growing darkness of her room, planning. Austin would return Saturday night. She would have a day and a half to decide how to confront him, how to escape the trap that had been her life for 3 years. Because one thing was clear. Harper Peterson Miller would no longer be a prisoner of a contract that reduced her to a commodity. No matter the cost, she had discovered the truth. Now she needed to decide what to do with it. And as the Pacific Ocean reflected the full moon through her window, Harper made the decision that would change everything. She was leaving, and this time, it would be forever. But first, Austin Miller would learn exactly what kind of woman he had underestimated for 3 long years. Sunday night arrived with an electrical storm that perfectly mirrored the tempest in Harper's heart. Lightning cut through the California sky as she waited in the living room, the printed contract documents meticulously organized on the coffee table like evidence in a courtroom. Austin arrived at 8 o'clock sharp as he had promised. Harper heard the familiar sound of his key in the lock, his footsteps in the marble hallway, the sound of his suitcase being placed on the floor. He appeared in the living room doorway with a smile that would once have melted her defenses, holding a small wrapped gift. "Harper, darling, I brought you something from Los Angeles." His eyes sparkled with an affection that Harper now knew was completely fabricated. "It's a first edition of Neruda I found in an old bookstore. I remembered you said his poetry consoled you when—" His words died when he saw the documents on the table. The smile disappeared from his face like paint being washed away by rain. The gift slipped from his hands and fell to the floor with a dull thud. "Harper." His voice came out as a strangled whisper. "Sit down, Austin." Harper's voice was icy, controlled, each word sharp as a scalpel blade. "We have a lot to talk about." Austin remained motionless for a long moment, like a man before a firing squad. Then, slowly, he walked to the armchair opposite the sofa where Harper was sitting, his eyes never leaving the accusing documents. "Where did you find this?" "On your desk." The drawer was open. Harper leaned forward, her blue eyes sparkling with cold fury. "Interesting reading, I must say, especially the part where I'm described as conjugal guarantee to secure contractual terms." Austin closed his eyes, as if the words were physical blows. "Harper, let me explain." "Explain?" Harper laughed, but the sound was empty of any humor. What is there to explain, Austin? It's all here. Black and white. $15 million in exchange for 5 years of my life. I'd say the terms are quite clear. It wasn't like that. It wasn't like that. Harper stood abruptly, beginning to pace the room like a caged tigress. Then tell me how it was, Austin. Tell me the version of the story where you didn't buy me like I was cattle. Austin opened his eyes and Harper saw something that surprised her. Tears. Real tears in the eyes of the man she had seen face hostile boardrooms without blinking. You're right, he said, his voice breaking. You're completely right. I was a monster. Your parents were desperate, my father saw an opportunity, and I simply agreed because it was convenient. Convenient. Harper repeated the word as if it were poison. 3 years of my life were convenient for you. Yes, in the beginning. Austin stood up too, taking a step toward her. But Harper, these last 2 weeks, everything I said, everything I felt, was real. Real? Harper guffawed. Austin, you're a better actor than I imagined. For a moment I almost believed you had fallen in love with me. I did fall in love with you. The confession exploded from him with an intensity that made Harper step back. Austin ran his hands through his hair, his corporate composure completely undone. I know how this sounds. I know I have no right to expect you to believe, but Harper, these last 2 weeks since that night in the garden, everything changed for me. You changed everything for me. It changed because Nathan Callahan showed up offering what you denied me. It changed because you realized you might lose your investment. No, Austin slammed his fist on the table, making the papers jump. It changed because I finally stopped being a coward. It changed because I looked at you, really looked, and saw the extraordinary woman I had ignored for 3 years. Harper stared at him, searching for signs of lies, of manipulation, but all she saw was raw pain and genuine desperation. Even if that were true, she said calmly, it doesn't change the fact that our entire marriage is a farce. It doesn't change the fact that you bought me like property. Then let me fix this. How, Austin? How do you fix 3 years of lies? Austin stared at her for a long moment as if he were making the most important decision of his life. Then, slowly, he pulled his phone from his pocket. Robert Miller, he said when the call was answered. Even from across the room, Harper could hear her father-in-law's deep voice. Dad, I need to talk to you, now. Austin, it's almost 9 at night. Now, Dad, it's about the Peterson contract. A tense silence followed. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Austin hung up and looked at Harper. Don't leave, please. Let me show you I can be the man you deserve. Harper crossed her arms. I have 2 suitcases packed in my room, Austin. The only reason I'm still here is because I wanted to look into your eyes when you admitted that our entire life is a lie. It's not a lie, not anymore. 23 minutes later, Robert Miller stormed into the mansion like a corporate tempest. At 62, he was an older, harder version of Austin, with perfectly groomed silver hair and a suit that cost more than luxury cars. What the hell is so important that it couldn't wait until... His words died when he saw Harper in the room, the contract documents spread out like evidence of a crime. Ah, his voice turned cold. I see. Dad, Austin said, his voice firm despite the visible tension in his body. I want to undo the Peterson contract. Robert blinked as if Austin had spoken in an alien language. Undo? Son, you're talking about $15 million. I know exactly what I'm talking about. Austin. Robert looked from his son to Harper with a calculating expression. Let me speak with you privately. No, Harper stays. She deserves to hear everything. Robert sighed, like a teacher dealing with a particularly difficult student. Very well. Austin, be reasonable. Yes, the arrangement was unconventional. But it worked. Peterson Financial is integrated, profits have tripled, and you have a suitable wife. Why fix something that isn't broken? Because it is broken, Dad. Completely broken. Austin looked directly at Harper. Because I reduced the most extraordinary woman I've ever met to a business transaction. And because she deserves more than that. She deserves to be chosen, not bought. You're being emotional, Robert said with disdain. Emotions pass. $15 million is concrete. Then keep your $15 million. Austin turned to his father with a determination Harper had never seen before. I want you to call the lawyers tomorrow morning, undo the merger, return Peterson Financial to Harper's parents, free and clear. Robert went pale. Austin, you can't be serious. I've never been more serious in my life. And Harper? What happens to the marriage? Austin looked at her, and Harper saw more vulnerability in his eyes than she ever thought possible. That, he said calmly, is her choice. For the first time in 3 years, it will be completely her choice. The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of rain against the windows. Robert Miller looked at his son as if he had never seen him before. You're throwing away $15 million for a woman. I'm correcting the biggest mistake of my life, Austin replied. And it's not for a woman, Dad. It's for the woman, the only one who matters. Robert shook his head in disgust. For you're weaker than I thought. No, Dad. I finally discovered what real strength is. After Robert left, reluctantly promising to execute Austin's instructions, Harper remained motionless in the room, trying to process what she had just witnessed. Why? She finally asked. Because you're worth more than all of Miller Enterprises, Austin replied simply. Because love isn't a business transaction, and because I want a chance, a real chance, to win your heart the right way. Harper felt tears sting her eyes. Austin, don't give me an answer now, he said, taking a step closer. Think about it. Process everything. And when you're ready, if you're ever ready, tell me if I can have a chance to love you the way you always deserved. Harper looked at the man before her, no longer the arrogant CEO who had ignored her for 3 years, but someone who had just sacrificed $15 million to prove a point. And if I say no? If I decide that 3 years of pain were too much? Austin smiled sadly. Then at least I'll know I set you free. And that, for once in my life, I did the right thing. Harper picked up her keys from the table. I'm going to a hotel tonight. I need time to think. Of course, however much time you need. At the door, Harper stopped and looked back. Austin? Yes? Thank you for finally giving me a choice. And with that, she left into the storm, leaving Austin alone with the wreckage of a contract that had cost 3 years of their lives, but that perhaps, finally, had freed them to discover what really mattered. But Harper carried a secret she hadn't shared yet, a secret that would change everything once more. The Hotel del Coronado rose majestically against the Pacific Ocean like a Victorian fairy tale castle, but Harper barely noticed its iconic architecture as she handed the BMW keys to the valet. Her hands trembled slightly, a combination of residual adrenaline from the confrontation with Austin and something else she couldn't identify. The room she managed to get at the last minute was modest compared to the Miller mansion's opulence, but it had something the mansion never had. It was truly hers. No contracts, no obligations, no ghosts of business agreements haunting every room. Harper let herself fall onto the king-size bed, still wearing the clothes she had worn during the confrontation, a navy blue silk blouse and black pants that now felt like armor she could finally remove. For 3 days she had mentally rehearsed that conversation, imagined every possible scenario, but nothing had prepared her to see Austin completely fall apart and sacrifice $15 million. $15 million. The amount echoed in her mind like a mantra. It was more money than most people saw in an entire lifetime, and Austin had thrown it away without hesitation. To free her, to prove a point, to... What exactly? Her stomach growled, reminding her that she had skipped dinner amid the drama. Harper called room service, ordering something simple, tomato soup and toast, comfort food for a night that had shattered her certainties about everything. But when the food arrived, Harper discovered she couldn't eat more than a few spoonfuls. The smell of the soup, which normally calmed her, made her stomach turn in a disturbing way. Maybe it was stress, she thought. Discovering that your entire life was a lie tended to cause digestive disturbances. The next morning, Harper woke with nausea that made her run to the hotel bathroom. Kneeling on the cold marble floor, with the bitter taste in her mouth and her body shaking, a terrible possibility began to form in her mind. No, it couldn't be. But as the minutes passed and the nausea persisted, Harper was forced to confront the reality she had been subconsciously denying for weeks. When was the last time she had her period? With all the drama of recent weeks, the gala, Nathan, Austin's transformation, discovering the contract, she had lost track of her body's natural cycles. A quick check of her phone's calendar confirmed her worst fears. She was almost 3 weeks late. "My God," Harper whispered to the bathroom mirror, studying her own reflection as if she were seeing a stranger. Her eyes seemed larger. Her skin had a glow she had attributed to stress, and now that she was paying attention, her breasts were definitely more sensitive. How had she missed the signs? How had she been so absorbed in the drama of her married life that she hadn't noticed the changes in her own body? The answer came with brutal clarity, because in the last 2 weeks, for the first time in 3 years, she and Austin had grown physically closer. Not sexually. They still hadn't crossed that line, but there had been gentle kisses on the forehead, hands that touched during dinners, hesitant goodnight hugs. And one night, about 4 weeks ago, right after the gala, when the tension between them had reached an unbearable peak, Harper closed her eyes, remembering that hazy night. Austin had come home later than usual, finding her in the library reading. Wine was involved, an expensive bottle of Bordeaux that Austin had opened to celebrate a successful deal. They talked until late, a real conversation for the first time in years, and then the memory came back in fragments. The way Austin looked at her when she laughed at something he said. How the space between them on the sofa had gradually diminished. The moment he touched her face and whispered her name like a prayer. How she didn't pull away when he kissed her. Really kissed her, for the first time since the honeymoon they never had. One thing led to another, and for the first time in 3 years, they shared more than physical space. It was desperate, urgent, charged with 3 years of repressed tension. The next morning, both had pretended it didn't happen, that it was just a momentary lapse of reason influenced by alcohol, but the consequences of that lapse were now growing inside her. Harper dressed quickly and drove to the nearest pharmacy, buying 3 different pregnancy tests, as if variety could somehow alter reality. Back at the hotel, she locked herself in the bathroom with trembling hands as she followed the instructions. 3 minutes, the longest 3 minutes of her life. When the alarms rang, Harper looked at the 3 tests lined up on the bathroom counter like evidence in a courtroom. 2 lines. Positive. Pregnant. All 3. Harper slid down the cold bathroom wall until she was sitting on the floor, the test still in her hand. A baby. She was pregnant with Austin Miller's child at the moment she had finally gained freedom to leave him. The irony was so bitter, it almost made her laugh. For 3 years she had dreamed of escaping her loveless marriage. And now, when Austin had finally freed her, when she could leave without financial consequences for her family, she discovered she was carrying a part of him that would connect her to him forever. Her phone rang. It was Austin. Harper stared at the screen, his name flashing like a question she wasn't ready to answer. She let it go to voicemail, then listened to the message with her heart pounding. "Harper, it's me. I just wanted you to know I called the lawyers this morning. The merger reversal papers are being prepared. Your parents will have the company back by the end of the week, free and clear." A pause. "I know I said I'd give you time, but I needed you to know these weren't just words. It's real. You're free." Free. The word she had longed for 3 years now sounded hollow in her ears. Harper spent the rest of the day walking on Coronado Beach, trying to process the impossible turn her life had taken. Happy tourists passed by laughing and taking photos. Families built sandcastles. Couples walked hand in hand at sunset. Normal life, simple life. Everything she had lost 3 years ago, and that now seemed more distant than ever. When the sun finally disappeared over the horizon, Harper had made a decision. She needed to see Austin. She needed to look into his eyes and decide if the man who had sacrificed $15 million for her was capable of being the father her child deserved. Because one thing was clear. Regardless of what she decided about their marriage, this child would grow up knowing both parents, would grow up with love, with choice, with everything she had been denied. Harper drove back to the mansion with her heart beating like a war drum. The lights were on, Austin's car in the garage. He was home, probably wondering if she would ever return. She used her key, after all it was technically still her house for a few more weeks, and found Austin at the piano, playing the same melancholic melody he had composed at 16. His back was curved, his fingers moving across the keys with a sadness that made Harper's heart tighten. Austin. He stopped playing immediately, turning on the piano bench. His eyes were red, as if he hadn't slept, and there was a vulnerability in his posture she had never seen before. Harper. He stood up but didn't approach. You came back. Temporarily. Harper took a deep breath, knowing the next words would change everything once more. We need to talk. There's something you need to know. Austin went pale. You've decided. About us. About everything. Not exactly. Harper unconsciously placed her hand over her abdomen, still flat, but soon to house visible evidence of the secret she carried. Austin, I'm pregnant. The silence that followed was absolute. Austin became completely still, as if the words had frozen him in place. Pregnant, he repeated finally, as if testing the sound of the word. With your child. About 4 weeks, I think. Austin closed his eyes, an expression of mixed pain and joy crossing his face. When he opened them again, there were tears there. Our baby, he whispered. Yes. Austin took a step toward her, then stopped. What does this mean? For us? I don't know, Harper said honestly. I just know that even though our marriage started as a lie, this child will be conceived in love. Because even though I didn't know it at the time, I think a part of me always loved you, Austin, even when I hated you. Tears finally fell down Austin's cheeks. Harper, I promise, I swear on everything sacred. If you give me a chance, I'll spend the rest of my life proving I deserve you. Both of you. Harper studied him for a long moment, seeing not the CEO who had bought her 3 years ago, but the man who had sacrificed a fortune to free her. The man who was looking at her now as if she carried the most precious thing in the world, which she realized was exactly what she was doing. One chance, she said finally. One real chance, Austin. Not as husband and wife fulfilling a contract, but as two people who choose to build something together. One real chance, he repeated, and Harper saw hope bloom in his eyes like dawn after the longest night. But rebuilding trust would be just the first step. Now they had to learn to truly love each other, not just one another, but the small life they had created together, and that would change everything once more. 2 months after the pregnancy revelation, Harper was in the Miller Mansion garden watching Austin plant David Austin roses, the same ones she had tended alone for 3 years. His hands were dirty with soil, a drop of sweat glistened on his forehead under the California May sun, and there was an almost reverent concentration on his face as he prepared the soil for the new saplings. You don't have to do this, Harper said, one hand unconsciously resting on her belly, which now showed a subtle curve, visible only to those who knew to look. Elena can take care of the flowers. Austin looked at her, and Harper was still surprised by the transformation in his eyes. Where there had once been professional coldness, now there was a tenderness that made her heart race every time. I want to, he said simply. You love these roses, and I want to love everything you love. The last 8 weeks had been a journey of mutual discovery that sometimes felt more intimate than any honeymoon. Austin had kept his promise to undo the merger. The papers were signed. Peterson Financial returned to Harper's parents' hands, and the agreement that had defined their lives for 3 years was officially dissolved. But instead of separating, they had chosen to stay, not due to legal obligation or family pressure, but for something much more precious and fragile, the possibility of real love. Our child will play in this garden, Austin continued, his voice laden with an emotion Harper was still learning to recognize. I want it to be perfect for him. Or her. Harper smiled, watching him work. This was another Austin, not the ruthless CEO who commanded boardrooms, but a man discovering fatherhood and conjugal love simultaneously. He had insisted on accompanying her to all medical appointments, holding her hand during the first ultrasound when they saw the small dot that was their baby pulsing on the screen. My God, he had whispered that day, tears flowing freely down his face. It's our child, Harper, our baby. The doctor had smiled, accustomed to emotional parents, but Harper knew there was something different about Austin's reaction. He wasn't just seeing his first child. He was seeing his first chance to love unconditionally, without contracts or conditions. We need to talk about names, Harper said now, sitting on the garden bench Austin had installed the previous week after discovering she liked to read outdoors in the morning. I've thought about that, Austin admitted, looking almost shy. If it's a boy, David, like the roses, like a new beginning. Harper felt tears sting her eyes. Since the reconciliation, she cried more easily. Hormones, the doctor said, but Harper suspected it had more to do with finally allowing herself to feel after 3 years of emotional numbness. David Austin Miller, she tested the name. It has a good sound. And if it's a girl? Harper smiled mysteriously. Elena. Austin stopped digging, turning to face her. Elena, like our Elena. She kept us connected for 3 years, Austin. When you wouldn't talk to me, she told me about your days. When I was sad, she made my favorite dishes without me asking. She was the bridge between us when we didn't know how to build our own. Austin was silent for a long moment, processing this. Then, slowly, a smile spread across his face. Eleanor Miller, he said. Perfect. That afternoon, while Austin worked in his office, but now always with the door open, always available if Harper needed something, she found herself in the formerly forbidden territory. His office. But this time, not as an intruder but as an invited guest. Austin had transformed half the space into a small office for her, complete with an antique desk that had belonged to his grandmother and a direct view of the garden where he now planted flowers for their future child. Do you like it? Austin asked, appearing in the doorway with 2 cups of tea, another new tradition since Harper had developed an aversion to coffee during pregnancy. It's perfect, Harper said, running her fingers over the polished surface of the desk. But are you sure? This has always been your space. Harper? Austin placed the cups on the desk and took her hands. There's no more mine and yours. There's ours. This house, this life, this future, and all ours. Harper studied his face, looking for signs of the manipulation she had learned to fear, but finding only sincerity. The weeks of couples therapy, Austin's idea, surprisingly, had taught them both to recognize and express genuine emotions. Speaking of ours, Harper said, Nathan called today. Austin tensed involuntarily, then forced himself to relax. The jealousy was still there, probably always would be, but now he trusted Harper in a way that transcended insecurity. And he offered a position in São Paulo, regional director for Latin America. Harper paused, watching his reaction. He said the offer remains open, even with the pregnancy. In fact, he said the motherhood experience would give me unique perspective for family development projects. Austin took a deep breath, and Harper saw the internal struggle in his eyes. The man he had been 3 years ago would have forbidden even considering the offer. The man he was becoming was learning that loving meant supporting each other's dreams, even when it hurt. It's an incredible opportunity, he said finally. If that's what you want. Austin. Harper placed her hand on his face, feeling the tension in his jaw. I don't want São Paulo. I don't want Nathan Callahan or any other man. I want to build something with you, here. Our family, our life, our love. The relief in his eyes was so palpable that Harper almost laughed. But, she continued, I want to work. I want to use my education, my talents. What about you? Austin smiled. That new smile he reserved only for her, loaded with pride and adoration. It so happens that Miller Enterprises is looking for a new international expansion director. Someone with expertise in Latin markets, fluent in 3 languages, and who understands both business and family. Harper pretended to consider. Do you know anyone qualified? I know the perfect woman. Intelligent, beautiful, pregnant with my child. Austin leaned in to kiss her softly, and completely indispensable to me. The kiss was gentle, full of promise and tenderness. Harper melted into it, marveling at how something as simple as a kiss could contain so much love after years of emotional hunger. There's one condition, she whispered against his lips. Anything. You have to stop blaming yourself for the last 3 years. We both made mistakes. I could have fought more, spoken more, demanded more. But now we have a chance to get it right. Austin rested his forehead against hers. How can you forgive me so easily? Because real love doesn't keep records of wrongs, Harper said, repeating something their therapist had taught them. And because I see who you really are now, Austin. I see the man who plants roses for our child, who holds my hair when I have morning sickness, who cries during romantic movies when he thinks I'm not looking. Austin blushed. You noticed that? I notice everything about you now. How you hum softly when you cook, how your eyes crinkle when you really laugh, how you talk to the baby when you think I'm sleeping." "I talk to the baby?" Harper laughed. "Last night, you spent 10 minutes telling my belly about your work meeting. It was adorable." Austin looked both mortified and charmed. "I want him to know it won't be like my father and me, that he'll always be included, always be heard." "He'll know," Harper said with certainty, "because he'll have you as a father. The real man, not the corporate version." That night they dined in the garden under the stars, a tradition that had begun spontaneously and was now sacred. Eleanor had prepared mushroom risotto, now Harper's official favorite dish in the house, and a fresh fruit dessert. "Elena," Austin said when the housekeeper came to collect the plates, "Harper and I would like to speak with you." Elena looked momentarily worried, as if expecting bad news. "It's nothing bad," Harper hurried to reassure her. "Actually, we want to ask if you'd like to be our baby's godmother." Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. It would be an honor, Mrs. Miller. Mr. Miller." "Eleanor," Austin said gently, "after everything you've done for our family, the least we can do is make you officially part of it." After Eleanor went back inside, too emotional to speak, Austin and Harper remained in the garden, their hands intertwined on the table, planning a future they had finally chosen together. "We need to remarry," Austin said suddenly. Harper blinked. "What?" "Our marriage, it was a farce, a business transaction. I want us to marry again, for real this time, for love." Harper felt tears well up in her eyes again. "Austin, it doesn't have to be big," he hurried to continue. "It could be here in the garden, just us, Elena, your parents, my father if he behaves. But I want real vows, Harper. Promises we choose to make, not ones we were forced to sign." Harper looked around the garden where Austin had spent weeks preparing for their child, for their family, where she had found her first real peace in 3 years. "When?" she asked. "Now that you're 4 months along, maybe next month? Before you get too uncomfortable, but after we're sure everything's fine with the baby?" Harper smiled, imagining herself in a simple dress, rounded belly, promising love to a man who had finally learned to love her back. "Yes," she said. "Yes, Austin. Let's get married, for real this time." And when he kissed her under the San Diego stars, with the David Austin roses perfuming the air around them and their child growing safely inside her, Harper knew that sometimes happy endings came disguised as new beginnings, but they still had a journey ahead before their love story would be complete. 1 year later, Harper Miller was standing on the balcony of the new Miller & Peterson International headquarters, watching Austin through the main office windows as he gently rocked 6-month-old David Austin Miller during a teleconference with investors from Buenos Aires. The baby slept peacefully on his father's chest, oblivious to the fact that he was participating in million-dollar negotiations. "Señor Martínez," Austin was saying in fluent Spanish, a skill he had developed in recent months to work more effectively with Harper. "Mi esposa revisará los contratos esta tarde. Ella tiene mejor ojo para detalles culturales que yo." Harper smiled, unconsciously touching the wedding ring she now wore with pride. It was the same simple platinum band from 3 years ago, but now it carried a completely different meaning. It had been blessed in an intimate ceremony in the mansion garden 8 months ago, when Harper was 6 months pregnant and radiant in an ivory silk dress that Elena had helped choose. "Dearly beloved," the Reverend had begun, but Austin had gently interrupted him. "Actually, Reverend, we'd like to write our own vows." Harper had looked at him surprised. They hadn't discussed this. But when Austin began to speak, the words came directly from his heart. "Harper, for 3 years I was your husband only on paper. Today I choose to be your husband in heart. I promise never again to treat our love like a transaction. I promise to see you every day as if it were the first time. I promise that our child will grow up in a home full of genuine love, not convenient obligation." Tears had flowed freely down Harper's face as she responded, "Austin, you taught me that love can grow even in the most barren soil. I promise never to stop choosing you, even when it's difficult. I promise that we'll build an empire together, not just in business, but in family, in love, in life." Eleanor had cried more than anyone, including Robert Miller, who had attended with a surprised but genuinely touched expression at his son's transformation. Now, watching Austin rock their baby while closing a $2 million deal with Argentine developers, Harper could barely believe the journey that had brought them there. Miller and Peterson International had been born 6 months after the second wedding, a joint venture that combined Miller Enterprises' technological experience with Harper's expertise in Latin markets. They had set up in a glass and steel building in the heart of San Diego, with a view of the bay and offices designed to balance professionalism with family flexibility. Harper's office was connected to Austin's by a glass door that always remained open, allowing constant collaboration, but also professional independence. There was an adjacent nursery where David spent mornings when he wasn't with Elena at the mansion, and a nursing area where Harper could work while caring for the baby. "Mrs. Miller?" Sarah's voice, the new executive assistant they had hired together, interrupted her thoughts. "Mr. Callahan is online too." Harper smiled. Nathan had become not just a respected business partner, but a genuine friend. When he learned of Harper's pregnancy and reconciliation, he had sent flowers and a note. "Apparently, some princes just need to remember how to be human. Congratulations to all 3 of you." "Nathan," Harper said, taking the call as she settled into her executive chair. "How are things in São Paulo?" "Flourishing, thanks to the contacts you provided. Harper, I have a proposal that might interest you both." Over the next 20 minutes, Nathan outlined a consulting opportunity for an international hotel chain that wanted to expand into emerging markets. It was exactly the kind of project Miller and Peterson International had been created to lead. "Obviously, it would involve some travel," Nathan concluded, "but nothing a baby couldn't accompany if you choose to do so." After hanging up, Harper headed to Austin's office, where she found David awake and playing with his father's shirt buttons while Austin finished emails. "How was the call with Nathan?" Austin asked, passing David to Harper automatically. They had developed a perfect dance of shared parenting, never a burden for just one of them. "Interesting, a big opportunity, but it would involve travel." Austin paused, and Harper saw that familiar moment where he processed his reactions before speaking, another skill learned in therapy. "What do you think?" he asked. "About the travel, about the project?" "I think it would be perfect for us, but only if we go as a family, all 3 of us." Austin smiled, and that smile Harper now saw dozens of times a day, and that still made her heart race. "David's first international business trip at 6 months. He'll be the most well-traveled baby executive in California." That night at home, Harper was in the nursery nursing David, while Austin read financial reports in the chair beside her. It was a completely ordinary domestic scene, but for Harper it represented everything she had dreamed of during 3 lonely years. "He has your eyes," Austin said, watching David nurse. "But your stubbornness," Harper laughed. "You saw how he refused to let go of his toy today when Elena tried to put him down for his nap? Determination. It's a Miller quality." "Or Peterson," Harper teased. Austin laughed, putting the papers aside and moving closer. "Definitely Peterson. Millers are just stubborn. Petersons are strategically determined." After David fell asleep in his crib, a crib Austin had assembled personally, following instructions with the concentration he normally reserved for corporate mergers, Harper and Austin retired to their own bedroom. Their physical relationship had flourished naturally after the reconciliation. There was no rush, no pressure, just a growing intimacy that reflected their deepened emotional connection. Austin had become as attentive a lover as he had become a father and husband, always making sure Harper felt loved, desired, precious. "Harper," Austin said as they lay together, Harper nestled in his arms in what had become their nightly ritual. "Sometimes I still can't believe this is real." "What specifically?" "Everything. You, David, us, the company. How did we manage to build something so beautiful from the wreckage of where we started?" Harper turned to face him in the soft light of the bedside lamp. "We built it because we finally stopped trying to build on lies. We built on truth, on choice, on real love." Austin kissed her softly. "You saved me, you know that? Not just from the contract, not just from the mistakes I made. You saved me from becoming my father. You saved yourself, Austin. I just reminded you of who you really were underneath all those layers of corporate protection. And you? Are you happy? Really happy?" Harper considered the question seriously. Was she happy? She had a husband who adored her, a healthy child, a thriving career, a family that had grown stronger through trials. But more than that, she had something she hadn't realized she'd lost. Herself. "I'm complete," she said finally. "For 3 years I felt like I was only half a person, existing in the shadow of a marriage that wasn't real. Now I'm Harper Miller, not just a wife, not just a mother, not just an executive, but a whole woman, living a life she chose." "Mrs. Miller," Austin whispered, kissing her forehead, "I love you more today than yesterday, but not as much as I'll love you tomorrow. Where did you learn to be so romantic?" "YouTube," Austin admitted with an embarrassed smile. "I searched how to be a better husband and fell down a rabbit hole of relationship videos. Elena caught me watching romantic gift tips in the kitchen last week." Harper laughed until tears came. "You researched how to love me?" "I researched how to love you better. There's a difference." When Harper finally stopped laughing, Austin had become serious again. "Harper, there's something I want to ask you." "What? Do you want to have more children? In the future, I mean. Should David have siblings?" Harper felt her heart expand. The idea of more babies, more nights like this, a house full of children's laughter and chosen love. "Yes," she said. "Definitely yes. But maybe let's wait until David walks before adding another Miller Peterson to the mix." "Miller Peterson? Or Peterson Miller, I'm still deciding." Austin laughed, pulling her closer. "Either way, as long as they're ours." Outside, Pacific waves gently lapped against the San Diego shore, the same shore where Harper had cried tears of loneliness 3 years ago. The same city where she had felt lost, invisible, worthless. Now, nestled in the arms of the man who had learned to truly love her, with their son sleeping safely in the next room, and a thriving company they had built as equal partners, Harper finally understood the difference between being married and being loved. Being married was a role. Being loved was a choice they renewed every day. And for the first time in her adult life, Harper Miller wasn't just living a life. She was living the life she had chosen, with the man who had chosen her back, creating a future that was truly theirs. In the end, it turned out some fairy tales were real. They just took 3.5 years, a baby, $15 million in sacrifices, and 2 hearts willing to learn that true love wasn't about owning someone. It was about choosing someone every day, again and again, until the choice became as natural as breathing. And Harper Miller breathed easily now, finally at home in her own life. Sometimes the deepest love is born not from love at first sight, but from the courage to start over when everything seems lost. Harper discovered that being seen, being chosen, being truly loved is worth any weight, any pain, any fresh start. Because in the end, it doesn't matter how a love story begins. What matters is how 2 hearts decide to write it together. And maybe, deep down, we all deserve to be chosen by someone who has finally learned what it means to truly love. Do you believe that love can transform even the coldest hearts? If this story touched your heart, please like, subscribe, and tell us in the comments where you're listening from. And if you felt it was really worth your time, click the Totally Worth It button. Your gesture makes all the difference and helps us keep bringing you stories like this.